Alejandro, what are you doing, fella?
This guy is very quickly convincing Manchester United fans that Ruben Amorim was right when he told him after the Europa League final, you better hope someone comes in and signs you.
How crass is that? Read the room, please.
He's acting like a petulant kid. And who does he think he is? He thinks he's the new Ronaldo. You're not very good, fella. That's why clubs are not queuing up to sign you. Honestly, I'm infuriated by this. I think it's pathetic.
Aiden Heaven, one of the young players, has liked it. Matthias de Ligt, you would say a senior player now, has liked this post. Kobbie Mainoo has liked this post. And the captain, Bruno Fernandes, has liked this post.
I would expect Rashford, Sancho, Anthony, maybe even Garnacho to be training away from the first team. I think Ruben Amorim is going to have to be pretty strong-armed in his tactics to get these players off the wage bill.
And Burmo, what's the latest with him?
I think it will happen now. And it's also a deviation from what United have done historically over the last 10 years in the transfer market. They're buying ready-made, proven Premier League players. I think they're going to finish top four, boys.
Where did it go wrong for Chelsea? And you can't just say the words Nicholas Jackson.
I thought the team selection was wrong.
Defensively, again, Chelsea poor, really poor at the back. And I think that's a massive issue. And I still think they've got a goalkeeping issue. But whether or not they're going to bother to sort that out, I don't know.
You need proper senior pros. And if they don't do it, then I don't see Chelsea finishing anywhere near a Champions League place next season. And if you look at the groups as we speak, the South Americans are doing really well. There's every chance that all the South American teams could go through.
But they want to prove a point to everybody else that they're not the inferior cousins of the Europeans. And I think they've shown that.
And this, for me, is exactly what Infantino wanted. There's only one thing he can't control. He's controlled a lot, but it's who actually qualifies. And at the moment, it looks like a proper competition.
Next summer, it clearly is going to favour the South American teams. We suggested that already. That's why I think Thomas Tuchel has got a massive job on his hand to win a World Cup in these temperatures.
This competition's only going to get bigger. Liverpool aren't in it. Arsenal aren't in it. Barcelona aren't in it. They're going to want to be in it.
It is Premier League All Access. We're in the dark period. Yes, we are into the middle of June, and it's supposed to be at this time that everybody is off sunning themselves. But no, the Club World Cup is still ongoing. We've got transfers galore. We've got new managers to talk about as well, including Scott's appraisal of the man at the G-Tech, who he knows very, very well, who's going to take over the reins at Brentford. We'll do that a little bit later on. Scott has just achingly got through a grueling charity event. Crook has just achingly had to negotiate how to get on the Wi-Fi in a different country. So we'll get to him in just a second. But Scott, how are you feeling?
Oh, Sam, I am aching. And there was a part of me. So I did a 72-hole golf charity for the charity I'm a patron of, the Red Eagle Foundation. 72 holes when I agreed it. I went, yeah, why not? Why not? Anyone I mention it to who loves a game of golf and has done anything similar were like, oh my God, what are you doing? But, great. I turned up there. Obviously it's walking, but I didn't even have a trolley. I normally carry. They were like, we've got to give you a trolley. By the end, I wasn't sure if my knee tendons were able to hold out. Genuinely, I had to walk in a really funny way in the last 9 holes. But we started at 5:15. We finished at 9:45 in the evening. It was 16 and a half hours, but it was well worth it. We raised good money, and it is a worthy cause.
Scott's been putting some pictures on Instagram, and he actually sent us some pictures as he was going around the course, and he got to sort of within 10 holes of the end, and he sent us a picture, and it did look like he was in pain. Let's just put it that way. His face, he's usually so smart and so sort of happy about life, but he did look like he was in pain. Crooks looked like he's been in pain ever since he's joined this call. He's been incredibly under the cosh. He's got to get off and do pool biking later. He's been in the pool playing volleyball, beating up the kids with the spikes and stuff like that. In fact, we've lost him. Like halfway through, even in the introduction, we've lost him because he hasn't paid for the Wi-Fi at the hotel. This is the truth, right? He refuses to pay for the Wi-Fi at the hotel, so he will only tether on his 5G phone. So it's an absolute disaster. So every time we sort of start talking to him, he just disappears. So we're just going to continue without him. And if he pops in and out, we'll just do that as we go along. I mean, he's an incredible character. He takes his role incredibly seriously. I mean, you know, it's the summer, Scott, when I'm sitting here deep in the basement bunker prepping for the Women's Euros and the Club World Cup. And the only bit of work that Alex Crook has done is checking the rules of the holiday swimming pool volleyball and trying to work out whether or not he can claim back the seafood meal on the harbour as a work expense last night.
Do you know what? He looked in pain there, didn't he? He doesn't do heat too well unless you're literally jumping in and out of the pool. And he sent a couple of, when I was sending the text and the photos, he sent a couple of, what was it? Him having a beer about 11 o'clock in the morning by the pool. And then it was him and Mrs. Crook having a cocktail about 1 o'clock. But he does look a little bit in agony at the moment. I don't think Son looks sweating and...
Do you know what I think it is? I think it's the technological sort of, requirements. The fact that he has to adapt to being in a different place. His laptop works in certain environments, but it doesn't work when if he's not comfortable. He gets very flustered very quickly.
Yeah.
But listen, Crook, we miss you. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder, and I suppose that is true. But all really Crook's holiday means for me is that there's more room in the studio for the iPads, the Y Scout machine, an unhealthy dose of Club World Cup fever dreams. He's back. You right?
Well, this is the Mrs. Hotspot now, so this is the last chance saloon for me.
Crook, how are you getting on?
Good. I'm sat literally in the hottest part of the hotel. I'm going to get sunburn doing this podcast. That's how loyal I am to this podcast and to you two. But all good. Feeling relaxed.
Okay, let's crack on then before we lose you again. Lots to talk about, including the Club World Cup and all the transfers, sagas, and some really interesting information about managers that will be in the Premier League next year. Let's start with the Club World Cup. Definitely a tournament that's clouded with issues, but some great football too. Al Hilal against Real Madrid, very good game. Chelsea beaten by FUMES. Joe Bellingham's impressive first goal for the club. Scott, you've been covering it a lot. What have you made of it?
Do you know what, Sam? I wasn't sure. From a player's point of view, I don't agree with it. I think the players do need a bit of a rest, and we'll have to wait and see how next year's World Cup is going to be when we've almost been 2 years on the run in this heat and humidity. But I've been really, I don't know if surprised is the right word, but quite impressed. We haven't even got to the knockout stages yet, and there have been stories. Messi scored a great goal. The smaller teams have done well. Al Hilal drew against Real Madrid. PSG, I did that game where they dominated Atletico and then lost to Botafogo. And the South American teams, and I think there is a reason for it. Look, we're at the end of our season in Europe, and especially in the Premier League, it's been a very heavy season. The South American teams are sort of in the middle of their season, and they look absolutely up for it. Not just physically, but mentally. I think they feel they've got a point to prove against the Europeans. And if you look at the groups as we speak, the South Americans are doing really well. Botafogo have already qualified. Almost all bar one are top of their group stages at the moment. And then there's also, who is there? There's Boca Juniors, who could still go through if they beat Auckland pretty well and Bayern beat Benfica. So,
did you say if they beat Auckland?
If they beat Auckland very well. I mean, it will come down to how many goals they score versus how many goals Benfica scored against them, and because they drew against each other. So there's every chance that all the South American teams could go through. And this, for me, is exactly what Infantino wanted. There's only one thing he can't control. He's controlled a lot, but it's who actually qualifies. And at the moment, it looks like a proper competition.
Indeed, it does. Manchester City, one of 8 teams that have already qualified as we speak for the last 16. Real Madrid could be their opponents in the next stage. Chelsea need a point to progress. That's at 2 o'clock in the morning overnight. Bayern Munich potentially waiting in the next round for them. But the European teams have not had it their own way. As Scott has already mentioned, Porto out, Atletico Madrid out, Inter Miami through to face PSG, which is, I think, great news for Infantino because Messi's still involved in the tournament. I think they'll absolutely love that. Benfica still need a point as well. Chelsea will go through in second place as long as they do not lose to the team from Tunisia. But if the Tunisian side win, they will qualify instead. Maresca's side could meet the winners of Group C, Bayern Munich or Benfica, should they qualify for the last 16. Inter Milan and Dortmund are not yet secure of position. Brazilian sides, I think, have been particularly impressive. They only lost one game. Fluminense in particular did very well against Chelsea, I thought. Botafogo beating PSG, as Scott's already mentioned. Argentina's River Plate have been good. The supporters have been absolutely superb. And I think that's the key thing, right? The South American supporters have embraced it as well, which means when we have the World Cup next year, whole countries coming together, it will be vibrant and colourful like every single World Cup. But there have been problems, and Crook's been moaning about the heat that he's involved in wherever you are in the world, Crook. Nashville today, they tell me, is going to be 41 degrees, which is unseasonal. They don't usually get to that sort of level. But the heat has been ridiculous. Maresca has complained about not being able to do training sessions. The kickoff times, though, have been sort of scheduled to accommodate European audiences. Do we think that will change for next year? Having seen what's happened this time around, do we think that FIFA will go, do you know what? We've got to be a bit more sensible about where we place these games in terms of the day parts. We'll push it to later, and the European audiences will just have to watch later in the day? Or do you think that they'll just go, TV is king?
Well, FIFA and common sense don't usually go hand in hand. Obviously, this is going to be a tournament that's played every 4 years. And I was reading an interesting piece in the Telegraph by Jason Burt, who's over there at the moment, and he was suggesting that actually this basically needs to be played in the USA every time it comes around, because if you're going to play it in the summer, in the hottest part of the year, you can't take it to Saudi Arabia, really, for example. You can't take it to Qatar. Obviously, we had a Winter World Cup then. And also, you need the infrastructure. So I thought it was a really good article for anyone who's not read it. In terms of next summer, it clearly is going to favour the South American teams. We suggested that already. That's why I think Thomas Tuchel has got a massive job on his hand to win a World Cup in these temperatures. I'm thinking back to USA 94. And I don't think they were particularly sensible with the kickoff times there. I particularly remember the Republic of Ireland. Was it John Aldridge getting the hump with the referee because of how hot it was in the Giant Stadium in New York? So, yeah, I think it's something European teams are going to have to get used to. And fair play to you, Sam. I obviously did a big betting preview on the tournament. I suggested the European sides would dominate. I think Opta did similar. They said 96% chance a European team wins the trophy. I think the South American teams have surprised us, as you suggested they might.
Well, it was just, to be honest, I know how seriously they take these events, because anyone who's watched the Club World Cup in its smaller form previously knows that it is really important to them. It's a badge of honour. They want to prove a point to everybody else that they're not the inferior cousins of the Europeans. And I think they've shown that. You know, there's been some really impressive games. And you've seen some great stories, some young emerging talent like the River Plate's Franco Mastantuono, who's been very impressive. Dorgeles Nene of Red Bull Salzburg, I think I really enjoyed watching him. Juventus have shown that they've got some great young players coming through. Kenan Yildiz, who plays for Turkey, was good at the European Championships last year. Francisco Conceição. Bayern Munich have sort of allowed Jamal Musiala and Michael Olise to almost take the lead in their team. And of course, the old stager Lionel Messi has sort of given the tournament its moment with that winning goal against Porto. There's a lot of influencer-based content, Crook, which is designed to inspire a younger audience. Me and the Herbmeister, my little boy, have been watching the games. What are your kids doing? Are your kids talking about it?
Yeah, they're talking about Messi's goal. They're talking about their YouTube pals that are over there and getting the content. Listen, from a younger generation, that is how you attract them. From a veteran dinosaur journalist perspective, I'm not in favour at all, because it means that Infantino isn't actually being held to account, because all these influencers really are just pandering to his whims. So, you know, I can see that the positives in terms of attracting that younger audience. But I think from a journalistic perspective, it's not necessarily where we want to be.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that I think you could come across a little bit sort of niled and sort of, because it doesn't really fit in with the European agenda to go off and do this tournament this time of year. And Scott's already talking about, from a player's point of view, it's difficult. It's 61st game, I think, for Chelsea coming up over the course of a season. But I think if you're a successful team, you do play a lot of football matches, and you have to get used to it. I think clubs need to realise that. I mean, this is not going away. This sort of multiplication of matches is not going away, Scott. You've just got to find a way to deal with it. And if that means carrying a bigger squad, then you're going to have to carry a bigger squad. And Pep Guardiola saying that he wants to keep trimming his, I just don't think that's going to be sort of sustainable in the modern era.
No, and it's fascinating to see. It's a really good example, actually, because obviously he is Pep Guardiola and he normally gets what he wants. But this competition's only going to get bigger. You know, Liverpool aren't in it, Arsenal aren't in it, Barcelona aren't in it. They're going to want to be in it. So, look, from a player's point of view, I do think we need to worry, because I do want to see, and even having been a player myself, I want to see the best players in the world doing something that I could only dream about on a football pitch. But from a fan's point of view and a broadcasting point of view, I love it. I must admit, I'm really enjoying covering it. I really do. And if it's successful, which I think it will be, and it is showing to be right now, then Infantino will not let this go. It was a battle between him and UEFA, and he'll want to try and come out on top here. And normally, when these sort of corporations or federations, better said, want to do something, they absolutely do it. Just my point of view on the times for the World Cup. I think TV's king, mate. Honestly, I don't think they're going to change. And I think what we saw with sort of Ray Houghton, I think back in the day, they almost weren't allowed water breaks, or they weren't allowed to just quickly go off the pitch and, put a towel around your neck or something. That obviously has changed, but it's all about TV and it's all about money. And if the big corporations want it at a certain time in Europe, I think they'll get what they want.
And what about that in terms of how that influences the TV schedules? Because we've noticed that there are breaks and storm warnings and delays and kickoff times that have been pushed back and half times that have gone on for 40 minutes or whatever. That actually is really going to mess around with TV schedulers, isn't it? Well, I mean, listen, I know what it's like to work in network television. I know that will send people balmy, like the idea that a match might not finish when it's supposed to finish, and especially if that could happen several times over the course of a 4-week period.
Well, you're into global warming territory now, aren't you? Because I think the world is hotter than it was in 1994. So these things are going to happen. We're going to get these sort of freak weather elements. And yeah, the broadcasters are going to have to be ready for that. I'm sure they're not going to be ready for player walkouts taking 25 minutes before the game. And, again, I'm still massively against that.
Manchester City, in their 6-0 win over Al Ain, saw Ryan Cherky score a lovely goal in his first goal for Manchester City. We saw Echeverry score his first goal for the club too. Jack Grealish obviously not involved. He was jettisoned after the FA Cup final. What's the latest on his future, Crook?
Well, he's training on his own. He's been putting pictures on social media. He looks in tremendous nick, it has to be said. He did this last summer as well. Obviously didn't have the desired impact because he wasn't able to force his way into the Manchester City team. That they're clearly trying to offload him, but wages are a problem. £300,000 a week is too rich for most clubs, really, in this country and certainly in Europe. I still think there's every chance that he goes abroad, but I think it will be a loan deal, and Manchester City are going to have to top up his wages. Just on Cherky, by the way, he was a player I really enjoyed watching for Lyon against Manchester United, and it pains me to say this with my club allegiances, but I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch, Ryan Cherky, in the Premier League. He's just a bit different, isn't he?
You only liked him in that game because Manchester United eventually won it, but it would have been a different story if they'd gone out, which they probably should have done, let's be honest. Elsewhere, Chelsea beaten by Flamengo. I mentioned that. They're coached by ex-defender Felipe Luis, who was at Chelsea for a very short period of time. Jorginho was in midfield. Scott, you covered that game. Where did it go wrong for Chelsea? And you can't just say the words Nicholas Jackson.
No. I actually think, I've kind of defended Enzo Maresca, and I think he's done a good job in very difficult circumstances, what's going on around him. And let's not forget, he's still a young manager in terms of his inexperience. But I thought the team selection was wrong. To put Reece James in midfield. Look, Reece James is a very good footballer. He was Player of the Year for Wigan when he was there on loan. But he's not a world-class holding midfielder. He's a world-class right back. I don't believe they're still worried about the physical side of it, because I think he has played enough games now and he's got to just keep kicking on from a physical point of view. And they had no control. And they were lucky to go in 1-0 at halftime. Ironically enough, and I said at halftime, I was working with Joe Shannon, that Romeo Lavia needs to come on, because what he does do, he really helps control the tempo of the game. And that's something that Chelsea weren't able to do. Ironically enough, the first 10 minutes of the second half, they were much better. But the moment it was bang, bang, 2-1, and then bang, bang, Nicholas Jackson, 4 minutes, In a way, I feel sorry for Enzo Maresca, but in another way, I felt he should have made those changes a lot earlier, or not the team selection he did in the first place. And look, they only need a draw against Tunis, and they will get that. I'm pretty sure of that. But then you perhaps play Bayern Munich in the round of 16. And we know that that's going to be very difficult indeed. So, yes, Nicholas Jackson was stupid. I mean, when is the penny going to drop after what happened at St James's Park as well? You've got this competition coming off, in Liam Delap, who worked really hard, had really good battles, but knew where the line was. There was one particular moment in the first half where Delap and the centre half, they were right physically up against each other, but both of them knew where the line was. And then Nicholas Jackson comes on, didn't even have time to develop a sort of a battle with a defender, and did what he did. So, yeah, you can't just blame Nicholas Jackson, but it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a silly thing for him to do, but he's got a lot of competition now for his place with Liam Delap up there. I mean, Delap yet to score for Chelsea, but he's been a presence, hasn't he? He's been a thorn in opponents' sides, and he creates a distraction for others. Pedro Neto's been particularly good, I think, and the speed which he showed to break away from the halfway line to take his goal was excellent. But defensively, again, Chelsea poor. Really poor at the back, and I think that's a massive issue. And I still think they've got a goalkeeping issue, but whether or not they're going to bother to sort that out, I don't know. Go on, why are you crying? Go on, say it.
Don't get me going on that. It does look like they're not, or they're saying they're not going to. I mean, you tell us, Crookie, they're not going to go for Mike Maignan, and they have to. With the greatest of respect to Robert Sanchez, who actually improved a lot towards the end of the season just gone. Chelsea needs a top-class goalkeeper, and they need a top-class centre-half as well. They've decided what they wanted to do with centre-forwards, and I get it with Liam Delap. Could even say sell Nicholas Jackson and then go in for the race that all the big boys are going for as another striker. But, yeah, they definitely need a goalkeeper, in my humble opinion.
I just don't think it's their model, is it? You mentioned about those big players that people are in for, your Gyökeres, your Šeškos, your Victor Osimhen. None of them really play into what Chelsea are looking for in terms of their recruitment structure. I agree on the goalkeeper. It could be gamesmanship when it comes to Mike Maignan to tell Milan they're walking away and try and get them to lower the fee. But I actually think the centre of defence is a big issue as well, as you've alluded to. They need experience there. If you still had Antonio Rudiger in that team, and I know he's been involved in some controversies over there, someone of that ilk, I think, would make a massive difference on the pitch, in the dressing room as well. And someone needs to get a hold of Nicholas Jackson and tell him to grow up a little bit, to be honest.
The thing is, Crookie, you're right. It's not their model, but at what point are they going to go and try and win the major trophies? I mean, Europa Conference League was great, but with respect, any English team, or most English teams, should be right there at the very end. Look, I've said about the centre half. You mentioned Rudiger, absolutely, a Thiago Silva, something like that, a goalkeeper. This is going to be a really difficult season for any manager who would be manager of Chelsea right now. You've just gone through a season where you've done really well in terms of finishing the league, but the Europa Conference hasn't really been taxing. In fact, for most of it, you've used a different 11. Yeah. Now this is Premier League and Champions League off the back of this tournament as well. Boy, you need proper senior pros. And if they don't do it, then I don't see Chelsea finishing anywhere near a Champions League place next season.
Interesting. It's a surprise that Rudiger's been involved in controversial incidents, by the way. He doesn't really get involved in stuff like that. He's usually very well behaved. Okay, so that's the Club World Cup, and it's continuing on talkSPORT over the course of the next few weeks. And, the guys will bring you all the flavour of the fair from there. I know that Troy's heading out to the semi-finals and the final as well in New York. So we look forward to the content they're going to produce from that. The England under-21s are doing pretty well as well. They were excellent in their game against Spain at the weekend. I thought that the performance was one of maturity, actually, from a young side, and one that I thought could go either way. Spain showed some real quality in that match. There were moments where they took control of it after England had got themselves into a very quick 2-0 lead, but they showed resilience, Crook.
Yeah, and I think what impressed a lot of people was the fact they went for the jugular. Too often the England senior team have been accused of being too defensive and boring the pants off us. You can't accuse Lee Carsley and the under-21s of that. He made a big call, didn't he, to bring Stansfield in from the start. And I think having that focal point up front made a massive difference. The player who's really enhancing his reputation and almost, for me, cementing himself on the plane for America next summer is Tino Livramento. You can understand why Manchester City are keen to sign him. You can understand why Newcastle are desperate to keep him. But you're right, it was a coming-of-age performance, and you have to make England favourites to retain the trophy now.
You certainly do. They go through to the semi-finals and possibly this Saturday, the final as well. It'll be live on talkSPORT, whatever happens. Make sure you stick with us for that. Right, okay, let's move on to some of the domestic stories now. We've got a new manager at Brentford and some big transfers in the offing too. So, Alejandro Garnacho shows up his summer holiday, but instead of packing a pair of Speedos, what he decides to wear is a Marcus Rashford Aston Villa shirt. Of course, I mean, he has to post that on Instagram. I mean, why wouldn't you? You can imagine his agent calling him up, frantic. Alejandro, what are you doing, fella? And then there's Garnacho sitting there casually sipping a mocktail overlooking the Balearic coast, saying, I'm just trying a new tactic. If no one's going to bid for me, I'll make sure I get an eviction notice from Manchester United instead. It'll be a lot easier. What's this fella playing at, Crook?
Well, again, same advice I gave to Nicholas Jackson. Grow up. You know what's going to happen. You say his agent will be tearing his hair out. He won't, because his agent is his brother, and he tells him he's the best thing since sliced bread. This guy is very quickly convincing Manchester United fans that Ruben Amorim was right when he told him after the Europa League final, you better hope someone comes in and signs you. His numbers were poor in the second half of the season. His attitude was clearly poor. He was dropped for that Manchester derby that Marcus Rashford was dropped for as well. He's acting like a petulant kid. And who does he think he is? He thinks he's the new Ronaldo. You're not very good, fella. That's why clubs are not queuing up to sign you. Honestly, I'm infuriated by this. I think it's pathetic.
Scott, is there something in the water at Carrington where you get these sort of young, precocious talents that obviously have something, but are not the finished article, yet they seem to behave in a way that very quickly alienates them from the club, the new managers, and then ultimately the supporters as well? What's happening there?
We've spoken about it for years, haven't we? The culture of the club, the culture of the dressing room, the culture of bringing in players who perhaps bring in the commercial side or sexy names rather than fitting in right. If Sir Alex Ferguson were in charge here, how many of those players would be left? And Scott McTominay, whatever you say about his ability, and he's better than a lot of people gave him credit for, would certainly be there as well. Look, again, I sort of hark back to the side that I played against: Beckham, Keane, Scholes, Giggs. I played with and against Rio Ferdinand, Teddy Sheringham. Honestly, they wouldn't. These players wouldn't last 2 minutes in the dressing room, and that's the problem, really. As much as Bruno Fernandes has been Manchester United's best player for the last 5 years, and one of the Premier League's best players for the last 5 years, by the way, there's not enough leaders in that dressing room to kind of, because that's exactly what Roy Keane did to Cristiano Ronaldo when he first turned up.
Yeah, but Scott, what I don't get now, maybe I'm missing something here, but are we missing the context of this joke? Is there more to this than meets the eye? Because I'm looking at the post right now, and I can see that Aidan Heaven, one of the young players, has liked it. Matthias de Ligt, you would say a senior player now, has liked this post. Kobbie Mainoo has liked this post. And the captain, Bruno Fernandes, has liked this post. Explain that to me. Someone explain it to me.
I think it says everything to what I've just said about. Could you imagine Roy Keane liking that?
He only got Instagram because his daughter set it up for him.
Exactly. Paul Scholes liking that. Peter Schmeichel liking that. It's why Manchester United are where they are right now. And look, in a way, of course, I blame the players and the people around them, but I also blame the club itself for bringing in these type of players, for creating this culture that has now led to. I mean, it's just, how crass is that? Read the room, please. And you're wearing a Villa shirt with Rashford on the back when everything that's happened at United, not just on the personal level towards the end of the season, but United of the last decade. Read the room.
Talking of reading the room, if you were reading the room in the Rashford household, you'd be thinking, whoa, he once again has decided to go on a pre-season physique busting training regime. Does that mean that he's going to get a move elsewhere? Apparently, he's told everybody he wants to go to Barcelona and nowhere else. I'm sure he wants to go. I want to go to Barcelona. I mean, I'd love to play for Barcelona. It's not going to happen, though. Has Rashford got a greater chance?
I'd quite like to win World's Strongest Man, but that's not going to happen either. Certainly not on this
I think
holiday.
actually Rashford's got a greater chance of going to Barcelona than you've got of winning that, bearing in mind your upper body strength, fella. I know.
I don't think Barcelona are bashing the door down at Carrington. If they do sign him, it will be a loan deal. So again, United are going to have to top up his wages. But you're right, he's made it pretty clear that he won't be forced into a move that he doesn't want. I think this one's going to go late into the window. The players we now know return to Carrington from July the 7th. I would expect Rashford, Sancho, Anthony, maybe even Garnacho to be training away from the first team. I think Ruben Amorim is going to have to be pretty strong-armed in his tactics to get these players off the wage bill. But again, I think we're going to be talking about Rashford and Sancho right up until the deadline on September the 1st.
And Burmo, what's the latest with him? Because you broke the story this week about a second bid going in from Manchester United. They're determined to get their man.
Yeah, they are. And I think it will happen now that the two teams have been in dialogue for quite some time. I think United were determined not to get in a situation where they put in multiple bids that were rejected. So I'd imagine this offer is nearer to Brentford's valuation, which is in excess of £60 million. They've seen what United have paid for Matheus Cunha, who's older and scored fewer goals last season in the Premier League, and said we'll have a bit of that. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about Tottenham. My understanding is that that's never really been an option for Bryan Mbeumo. He's already agreed personal terms with Manchester United. He told Newcastle he was going to join Manchester United, and I believe he told Tottenham the same, despite the Thomas Frank factor. And I think this is a good signing. You know, you look at United last year, defensively, not too bad. 7th or 8th best defensive record. They scored 44 goals in the Premier League. Between Cunha and Mbeumo, they scored 35. So I think these are two excellent signings. And it's also a deviation from what United have done historically over the last 10 years in the transfer market. They're buying ready-made, proven Premier League players. I think they're going to finish top 4, boys.
I said to you, I mean, the season before, like, how long have I been banging on about the fact that this Manchester United team don't score enough goals? How long? I mean, it's so plainly obvious. It's been going on for years that they don't score enough goals. They need to score more goals, and Burma will help them do that.
They could do with a striker, though, couldn't they? That helps scoring goals, doesn't it?
Yeah. But there's a guy who I saw score a tap-in at Fratton Park from 5 yards. He's also got a great record at Old Trafford, if I remember rightly.
Bombing on down the right, wasn't he?
Undefeated record at Old Trafford. Yep.
Don't think he'll be very good, though, if they got to the Club World Cup in that heat, by the looks of him.
Could you imagine? I can see the right side of his face already getting really red.
He looks like Fred the Red.
I don't know what's going to melt first, me or the laptop. I'm a little bit worried about the laptop overheating.
By the way, Sam, we heard it there. United top 4. I don't know if he said that before. United top 4.
Let's clip that up and make sure we keep playing that throughout the course of the season. Martin O'Neill will be licking his lips because Keith Andrews is going in at Brentford. I wonder whether or not Martin O'Neill is thinking he's going to get the job as set-piece coordinator. I'm not necessarily sure that's going to happen. But Scott Minto, you have worked closely with Keith, haven't you? And you know him quite well. I know that he's excited about the possibility of getting this job. Just tell us a little bit about him and what Brentford fans can expect.
Yeah, look, I think just to say he's one of the most diligent people I know, I think, sort of puts down every other manager because they all do the same thing. Look, there's no doubt about it. It's a gamble. He's not been a manager before, but he's got lots of experience. He's been there from a coaching capacity. Obviously, he was assistant manager as well of Republic of Ireland. He's seen how Brentford work. And I know that Brentford love sort of promoting from within. And that's how Thomas Frank got the job in the first place. There is a difference between the Championship and the Premier League. And when you're going to lose arguably your best player, and they will, it's going to make things very tough. So he needs help with recruitment. And I'm sure that Matthew Benham knows what he's doing, will help on that front as well. He can't do it all himself, but there is a really good sort of group of people there that he knows and he can bring in as well, the people that he knows really well, that people will have instant respect. And yeah, look, speaking to him, he's a mate, but also just from the football front, fascinating just listening to him and how he sees different things. And he's always been more than just a set-piece coach. That's the way that it was brought into Brentford. I'm sure he had a lot more input than that.
Well, it's good news for him that he's worked his way through, and he sort of was willing to take that job in order to sort of put himself in the shop window, and therefore um, get the opportunity to be the next manager of Brentford, which is what he is now. So congratulations to him. As Scott's already said, big job on his hands, and I do think actually out of all of the teams, Brentford have got the biggest task next season to sustain their Premier League future, because the amount of teams towards the bottom end of the Premier League that aren't going to be at the bottom end of the Premier League next year certainly means that there is going to be a propensity for someone to drop. And Brentford will be a candidate for that because they've lost a clutch of really good players over the last couple of years. They've lost their manager. It's a new manager in the dugout, and their recruitment, I think, is going to have to be exemplary, because if they get anything wrong next year and then unlucky with injuries, then they're going to find themselves scrapping towards the bottom of the table. Hopefully, from Keith's point of view, they surprise everybody and end up replicating what Thomas Frank has done. So a few issues at Liverpool to sort out. Wirtz is in. Kirke's done now as well. Quansah's on his way out, Crook. And what's going on with Garnacho?
Yeah, Quansah to Bayer Leverkusen, I think, is an excellent move for him. The chance to go and play Champions League football and to be a first-team regular. It's a record fee for a defender at Leverkusen. So congratulations to him on that move. I think, again, he's been excellent during the Under-21 tournament. Garnacho's an interesting one because, again, it's a situation that the new hierarchy have inherited, really, when one of their top players is now into the final year of his contract. At the moment, there's no imminent sign that he will pen a new deal. They're not panicking, Liverpool. I know they've been linked with Mark Gay in the last week or so. I think that will only happen if the price is right. If not, I think they're willing to wait until next summer and maybe sign him on a free. And I think he's quite relaxed about his future as well. He's got the option to play for Palace for one more year, get European experience under his belt, hopefully from his perspective cement himself in the England squad, and then he's going to have his pick of clubs. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on Konaté. They do want to bring in a centre-back if they can. They were in for Dean Howson, but obviously he's gone to Real Madrid. And they want to bring in another forward. So I still think there's plenty of excitement in this transfer market as far as Liverpool are concerned.
Yeah, they're waiting for the price to be right for Mark Gahey. They'll have to wait for it to come on down. You only get that if you're as old as me and Scott. Right. Elsewhere, John Stone says he wants to stay at Manchester City. Actually, an interesting interview that he did this week in which he sort of said, I want to shut down any speculation about me possibly leaving the club. He said, I'm fit, I'm getting there, admitted that there were injuries that were causing him mental issues as well. He's worked with the City medical staff to sort of find out why he's had so many problems. And he said, I wish I had the answer and wish we all had the answer. It is frustrating for me. It's put a lot of pressure on me. I find it very challenging mentally. I've had some very low points in the past season. I've just come back. And once you come over those things, you can't really see the end of the tunnel when it keeps happening again and again and again. As a player, Scott, how difficult is it when you know that you can do something? And John Stones is incredibly talented. He's a wonderful footballer. He's cherished by Pep Guardiola. That gives you a certain level of kudos. He's also, Thomas Tuchel was desperate for him to be fit next summer. But how hard is it for him when he keeps getting injury after injury after injury?
Was it Leslie Crowther, Price is Right?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
I thought so. Yeah, I was just in my head now thinking.
I think Bruce did the first series and then Leslie took over.
Okay, just glad we got that
Very
sorted.
good.
Yeah. Look, injuries is the worst part of being a professional footballer. I probably was injured for half of my career, and half of the other half, I was going out almost limping. You ask a professional footballer, they're never 100% fit. But the fact he's not even been able to get himself out onto the pitch, absolutely, it plays with your mind when you see the lads traipsing out, and you then have to go to the gym or the swimming pool, and you're on your own. It's really, I'm not asking for violins, but you want to be out there playing. And I totally agree with you. I think if you said to Thomas Tuchel, if everybody's 100% fit, what your centre-back partnership, as well as Ezri Konsa's done, I think he'd be saying Mark Gahey and John Stones. So it's really important for him, for his club, and for his country to get back 100% fit. And, when you've got the riches that Manchester City have in terms of sports science and the medical department still struggling to find a way to get him fit for a period of time, that's really worrying and really tough. So I do wish him all the very best.
If he is fit, don't be surprised if for England he plays 6, plays in holding midfield position. I wouldn't be too surprised if that was the case either. Crystal Palace have got a new ambassador. Yes, the formal ambassador to England. Woody Johnson. I did tip you off about this, Crookster, the other week when we were on White and Jordan. Woody Johnston is going to buy John Textor's shares, and that will alleviate any pressure for UEFA issues for Crystal Palace. But Woody Johnson is a very rich man, Crook, isn't he? He owns the New York Jets in the United States.
Yeah, how's that going for him? Because I've seen a few negative comments from Palace fans about his ownership.
The Jets are rubbish.
Well, there you go. So you can understand.
They've got a great stadium, though, mate. They've got a great stadium.
Well, obviously, Palace want a new stadium, so maybe that's a step in the right direction. But I think the overriding emotion on this one is relief for the Palace fans, because we've spoken about this before. If Palace were made an example of by UEFA, it would have been an absolute disgrace. They've earned their shot at Europe. You know, fans have waited a lifetime to see their team play in European competition. They deserve it with what they achieved in the FA Cup, and hopefully it brings a bit of stability and it brings a bit of ambition as well, because I always get the feeling with Steve Parish that he's happy for them just to be a middling Premier League club. I think maybe with the injection of cash from Woody Johnson, they can strive to be a bit more than that. I do fear they might lose Eberici Eze, though. I think, Tottenham are not going to get Mbeumo. They're not going to pay the money for Antoine Semenyo of Bournemouth. I think Eze is a more attainable target for Spurs.
Yeah, I think they're resigned to losing Eze. I think they know that that's going to be the case. I think they've been well versed in that for a little while now. So I'm not sure that would be too much of a shock for them. England against the Netherlands under-21s is live on Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Joe Shannon and Darren Ambrose bringing you commentary of that. Juventus, Manchester City, the final group game from the Club World Cup is on Thursday. We do have the Chelsea game overnight as well. Friday night, we've got more football for you. Saturday, Sunday, all of the big talking points. And then we start the Women's European Championship. In fact, the next time that you hear from me, I will be out of the bunker and in Switzerland. That's right. I will be in Switzerland getting ready for the Women's European Championship. Scott, thank you very much. Crook, see you later. See you next week.